satellites? A satellite represents a journey, information gathering, this journey around the Earth.
Yeah, we were talking about the Apple, like the new interface. I bought the iPhone 1.0, and I had like the 3 and the 4 and the 6 and and I remember thinking when I got my 10 that it was the best phone I'd ever had. Like it was small, it had a crazy high def screen, and I can't remember exactly when, but like Jony Ive was asked if he wanted to he was told he could redo the iOS interface. Remember that?
Okay, yeah.
That might have been around.
Is that when they changed it all to Helvetica?
Yeah, something. But
I think he changed, like the Apple had its own font, and then somewhere in the early post Steve Jobs era, they changed the Apple font to Helvetica everywhere, and designers were like, "What the." Like you designed, like Apple is the quintessential design company. They created their own font, and they just ditched it for Helvetica. That was weird.
Well, there were so many things. So I had designed. That might have been around the time of the 4 or the 6, but I remember
it was right after Steve Jobs passed away. So I don't remember what year or what model iPhone was out around that time. But go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and I had designed for the 3. I had designed an iPhone app for yoga. Like it was a yoga app.
Yeah, I remember that.
So I had worked with a developer, and I remember thinking, like, I designed all my own icons, and the guy was like, "Please read this white paper. Apple's done tons of research about like how beautiful." Like,
they had their like design guidelines that were very detailed, and they still do.
And they had done a lot of research about intuitive, like a box with an up arrow. Just everyone, no matter what language you're in, that's like share a document. Like or like to the right or go back and. So they had done all this work, and I was like, oh, got it. So I redid all of my interface based on their thing, and then Jony Ive, like who I think is a genius hardware designer, comes out with this thing, and I remember the first thing that I thought was.
I mean, he's a brilliant. I mean, he's a very talented industrial designer. Yeah.
And when I say genius, I mean like his shit's in the MoMA because. Yes, he says I don't like holes, and so as a user it sucks, but it looks fucking gorgeous.
Yeah, I think that's the difference between Steve Jobs and Jony Ive, and that's why they were such a good balance to each other. And Jony Ive didn't have that kind of challenging opposition. Opposition's too strong a word, but that sort of challenging counterpoint after Steve Jobs passed away. Because Steve Jobs' whole thing was like delight the customer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so sometimes that meant simplicity, and people always think, oh, Apple, that's simple design, but it's not always simple. Like sometimes it's just the most brilliant little convenient thing. Like one of the things that went away, this is just a simple thing, but one of the things that went away after Jony Ive took over and really pressed simplicity was, remember the Apple cord, like the power cord? It had those little wings that flipped up and you could wrap the cord around itself.
Yes. Oh, you
see, like that was so cool, right? Like that's a perfect example of Steve Jobs where it's not simple. It's like, hey, how can we make this really great and delightful for the user?
Yeah.
Right? And they added something. They didn't take away something. So Jony Ive's all about taking away stuff to make it simple and clean. But sometimes the Steve Jobs influence of like, why don't we add this thing? Because you have this stupid cord, like let's make a thing. Or the magnet power, really? Right? Like those little things were like, those were very Steve Jobs. It's like, let's delight the customer with something they've never had on any other device that's really cool and convenient.
Yeah.
Right.
And solves a serious problem. Like when you would walk past your laptop power cable and it would yank it onto the floor, like you'd break your screen. And that thing just popped right off. It's amazing.
Totally. So that's the Steve. I think I attribute that kind of thing to Steve Jobs. And it's not simple design. It's convenient, delightful design. Not always simple, right? But Jony Ive is all about like, let's make it really simple.
So my experience was I always felt like I was resistant. I refused to buy an iPod. I just didn't want another thing, and I didn't want to charge something. So I waited for the phone. And to me, the phone was like one device that is an iPod and all these other things, right? So I was happy with my iPhone 1. So Jony Ive comes along, and I'm not so good at iTunes. Like I feel like it always feels like there's things missing. Like it doesn't feel like a real browser. Like it's hard to find songs. So I remember was in this yoga class, and the song kept repeating. And one of my students was like, it's starting to drive me crazy. Could you turn off the
Right,
repeat?
it was like looping one track.
Yeah, one
basically.
song, just one song. And so I go to look at it, and I'm like, oh my God, where did he hide that? Like he used to have that sort of figure 8 infinite loop or one time. Like there were 3 little icons.
Yeah, it was like a little sort of a loop, and it had you could click it once, and it would loop. It would play the album, and you would click it another time, and it would show a little 1 on it, and it plays the song. Yeah.
So I was looking for that thing, but Jony Ive had redesigned the interface, and I couldn't find it. And I literally, I think I turned it off, or I switched to a different playlist. And then later after class, I Googled it, and he hid it. You had to swipe up from the bottom of the song, the individual song, and then there was there. But there was no indication. There wasn't a little bar, or you had to just know that. And I called that tribal anecdotal transfer of knowledge, where until someone shows you that, you will never figure it out. And that's not very Apple.
No, it's not. Well, it's very Jony Ive Apple is what it is. It's like, hey, there's too many things on the screen right now. What if we move some of them to a different place? That's his whole thing is, how can we make it cleaner and simpler?
Well, in this case,
Which
he
sometimes
said,
is perfect. Sometimes that's exactly what you need as a user. But I think Steve Jobs had such a great intuition for what you need, what a user would want to see, and what's most convenient. And again, I don't think Jony Ive had anybody with that kind of counterpoint challenging him at all since Steve Jobs passed away, because that's not Tim Cook's thing, right?
Yeah.
Tim Cook couldn't care less about design, hardware, any of that. He's a business dude and a cost-cutting dude and a supply chain dude and all that, right? Tim Cook has his strengths, but it has nothing to do with the user experience.
It's true. It's really true. It's true. And I saw that Jony Ive left.
Sorry, I mean Tim Apple.
Tim Apple, yes. I saw that Jony Ive left Apple and went to London, and or maybe he's always been in London, but he started a consulting firm, and he just sold it to Ferrari for $3 billion or something. And I don't exactly.
Who did? Jony Ive?
Yeah, and he's going to get to design a Ferrari.
Oh wow!
That seems like if you're.
Do you think Apple will come out with a car? That's been a speculation for a long time.
I just heard a mini part of a podcast about the failed Apple car, and basically they threw $1 billion plus at it, and they said we're not going to do it. I don't know why. It seems so. Once you get the EV skateboard with the four motors, and then everything's electronic and it's a software thing.
They probably just couldn't figure out how to get that bevel on every part of it. They're they're trademarked bevel curve or whatever. They're there's so many parts of the car where the bevel doesn't really work.
Yeah, I'm really curious why. So have you heard of these BYDs?
I don't know what that is.
BYD is it's a Chinese company that 20 years ago.
The Chinese cars.
Yeah, they made the worst car in the world. It was like a Yugo 20 years ago.
They have beautiful cars now.
Beautiful cars, and they're really even Elon Musk was they're kicking Tesla's ass. They're beautiful.
Totally.
Now.
I mean, Tesla sales in China are tanking.
Yeah, and they're so smart. They're so well designed and. Anyway, but they did start out as a very shady, they made a Yugo of China. People said they broke down 2 weeks after you bought it. It was falling apart. Obviously, they weren't EVs, but to me, it seems if I had to design a combustion engine car, there's so much crap that can go wrong.
Oh, so much going on. Yeah, I mean, you have a whole cooling system. You have a transmission. All these things go away with an EV. Yeah.
Shit wears out, and there's radiators and shit. It's so annoying. And then an EV, it's so simple, and then so much software. It can be I would just think it would be perfect for Apple. I just think it would be the perfect next step. I'm so surprised they didn't do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's still parts. I mean, there's still a bunch of things in a car that are kind of the ancillary kind of part, tires and wheels and and all kinds of different. I can see why it's not their thing. What I think would make sense for them to do is the car, they have CarPlay. They could double down on that and kind of make an interface for a car or something. I don't know. The software interface for your car could be something they really own. But
my wife's new Tucson Hyundai. I use CarPlay every time I use it, and I think it's great. I mean, it auto connects, and I can do everything that my phone can do. Like it even has like a nicer interface on the screen. It's the only thing I can't do is skip ahead on NPR. That's the only thing they won't let me do. You know how you can do like 15 seconds ahead with that little circle? You can't do that on the screen, but maybe there might be restrictions because drivers would be distracted. You know, like,
every once in a while I'll run into a CarPlay experience where like it has the 15-second thing or the 10-second or 30, whatever, to skip ahead and rewind, but it just for whatever reason doesn't work on the screen. It did, like the software integration didn't quite work all the way.
That's interesting, huh?
Yeah, but typically that's something like I'll be listening to. If I go to like my New Yorker app, right, and I'm reading an article, and there'll be like a listen to this article little sidebar or something, and I'll play to listen because I'm going to go driving. I'll listen to the rest of this article instead of reading it. Well, there's no New Yorker audio app, right? So it's just using whatever basic audio of the phone to play itself within the New Yorker app, right? So CarPlay doesn't have a New Yorker app, so it's sort of like trying its best to have an audio interface in CarPlay for that thing that doesn't really have a CarPlay app. So sometimes the forward and back doesn't work in those situations for me, even though it's on the screen.
It makes me think of, do you remember the browser wars? Like when Internet Explorer and Netscape, and then it was like, and some people would come out with like, Adobe would be like, hey, we're going to make this like little animation Flash plugin, and then everyone is doing cool things. And then you get to a browser that didn't have it, and the whole site experience would fall apart, and there wasn't like a fallback kind of system. But I remember then later I was designing an ebook with this kid. I had hired like a software developer who had published his own ebook, and so he knew how to do it. And we were sitting there one day, and I was like, I feel like it's the net flip. What was it? We called those the browser wars times 10. And he goes, yeah, because you say you're designing it for the iPhone, but he goes, there are 3 different viewport sizes of the 15, like of the 4. And then there's like a 1, a 2, a 3. He's like, just think of that. And then there's a Kindle Nook, and then there's a Fire, and it was just like trying to make that sort of XML file that could handle all of those viewports, sort of like elegantly scale and make it so that it was
like the responsive design. So responsive design has come a long way, but I remember when I worked for Vodafone, this is pre-iPhone days, right?
Yeah.
And so we had, I should put up I helped make the what they called the digital interaction guidelines for Vodafone. So
and what kind of devices were you running on? Like what
I was part of a small team, and we created these digital interaction guidelines because Vodafone wanted to expanding around the world and wanted to be like one of the world's most recognizable brands. They had like a Ferrari F1 sponsorship and the Manchester United soccer team sponsorship. Like they were putting their logo everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things they wanted to do was have these consistent kind of app experience across all of their operators around the world. And so we created this style guide. But we literally had like the Nokia devices, the early Nokia devices. We had all the Sony Ericsson devices. There were like these sort of revolutionary widescreen like ones that flip down a full QWERTY keyboard, right? And it would be on like a very wide screen. And then there were like the sort of the Palm Pilot style touch screens, but with a stylus, right? And everything from like a 2-way scrolling only, I can just barely do text messaging, but I have a few apps that are like really simplistic apps, all the way up to like these widescreen, touchscreen kind of stylus-driven things. And, so we had to create like this whole framework for how an app would work across that whole range of crazy interfaces, like a messaging app, right? Like how to make it both somehow consistent, but also support not just screen sizes, but such different form factors. Yeah, it was crazy.
It's mind-boggling. And how were you able to achieve it? Like, did you feel like you reached?
We did. So we created this. I'll put it in the show notes because part of what we created, I'll put in the show notes because we created this sort of this sort of framework for like there's increased mobility as you go up this, decreased mobility as you go up the scale of functionality. Like you can sort of walk in text on the very simple device, but like when you're doing this complicated stuff on a touch screen, so we had this sort of spectrum of like mobility versus functionality, kind of almost perpendicular axes, or perpendicular, or sort of opposite curves. But yeah, we created this very comprehensive guide, and I thought the way we organized it was pretty successful. And then we did like a roadshow around a whole bunch of different Vodafone operators around the world to kind of get it adopted, and working with all the design and developer teams in all these different places. And it was received really well. Like they all thought like it was the way we had structured it, and the way we had built like a book, like a 300-page book, and that we printed out in this beautiful published book. But we also had like a digital, like, because it was going to change, right? But that was kind of to help get people excited about it. But we had like a website and everything. And so the way people could look up, like, so today they do that with like, it's so much easier today. The tools to do that today are amazing. Like Figma, the interaction designer tool, Figma. It's built basically, it's sort of, the way it's built is effectively very much aligned with how developers build a UI, right? Like you have at the very atomic level, you have tokens like brand colors and fonts and things like that, the simple things. And then you have components that you can define and then reuse, right? Like a button would be a really small component. And then the button has the tokens, like the colors and the border, the background color and the border color, right? So you might have 3 different button components that are all using certain tokens. But that's what's super cool is you can change the token. Like you're like, oh, the brand color changed.
Sort of like CSS, like you can go change it and then it ripples out across.
Or we thought this would be a good button color for the cancel buttons, but users are confused, right? And you have 2,000 cancel buttons in your different applications across the web and different mobile apps and everything, and you're like, you change one token and it changes the color of all those buttons, right? Nice. And so it's super cool. Like the way it's built now, the way you can develop that stuff. So we created all those that was the same kind of ideas, but the tools to do it back then were so rudimentary compared to what you have today. Anyway.
Is that, because I sort of stopped, I was stymied, I did some HTML and then I stopped with cascading style sheets. But I understood the concept, like that you had these sort of layers of styles, and it sounds like it's a similar idea.
It's very similar, yeah. It's CSS, and it's just evolved further than what it used to be, yeah. But it's still CSS, roughly.
That's pretty wild.
Cascading style sheets still exist.
Yeah.
It's just evolved into something much more powerful than it was when you're talking about in that era.
Yeah.
And I don't mess around. That's crazy is, I was just thinking about this, and I wrote a piece about it on my blog about kind of just AI and coding, and how I had a little section in there. I read these 2 predictions for AI. One is called AI as Normal Technology, and one was called AI 2027. Have you heard of these?
No.
So there's 2 different groups that put these out. Anyway, in the AI 2027 one, he talks a lot about how AI will replace software coding, right? And there's all these amazing, it's called vibe coding. Have you heard of that, vibe coding?
No.
So these tools now that you can find on the web for quote unquote vibe coding, some dude coined that term, but it's basically like coding based on prompts. It's like where you just tell the AI what you want to build, and it builds shit, right? And then you edit it by using AI prompts, right?
Okay.
That stuff's incredibly powerful already. Like what you can build as an app with just quote unquote vibe coding tools. And so when you think about like just in a couple years, it's pretty easy to imagine being able to talk to an app and have it build a very robust, complicated application, right? Yeah. So it's just wild to me to think about, like, when you think about how much investment has gone into grooming a generation of software developers, there's like coding boot camps and online courses, and like you have like Zuckerberg and Bill Gates like taking over school systems and reshaping them to be very STEM heavy, right? And you have charter schools that are all about kind of grooming a whole generation. All of that shit's going to be meaningless in about 5 years. That's crazy.
It is pretty crazy.
I mean, there's so many jobs that are not vulnerable, I think, to AI, but like coding is probably the most vulnerable. That's like the thing that they're aiming at first. All those guys.
And ironically,
these
like
AIs.
legal contracts, like lawyers charge so much for contracts, but it's something that it's so simple for AI to kind of write up a contract using, Hey, speaking of which, we got to talk about current events. Did you see the Grok blow up? I
heard a little bit, but talk about it. I don't know. I didn't. That's one current event I wasn't following that much. Yeah, I heard a little bit about it.
So I'm going to summarize, and again, like I'm biased. I'm like left of Bernie Sanders, so like I'm pretty biased. So so it seems as if some MAGA influencers were upset because the Grok would always use facts. Like someone would ask something.
Oh,
like, Grok, is this
it
correct?
Would like correct
so it would be like, this is not true and this is true.
Right.
And they were like complaining that they wanted their worldview, like the idea that January 6th was a beautiful day of walking through the Capitol. They wanted that to be represented by Grok, like to be returned as an analysis by Grok. So they complained and they petitioned Elon Musk, and he said, "Okay, I'll go fix it."
I'll quote unquote fix it.
Yeah. He said, "No, I'm
just like he did with the white supremacy, the white genocide thing." Anyway, I heard
well, no,
about
that
was one that I did hear about with Grok.
This is basically like the second generation of that white genocide thing. So he says, "I'm going to go fix it," and they said, "What are you going to do?" And he goes, "I'm going to make it not woke. I'm going to make Grok not woke." So the next thing that happened was. This kind of this woman who goes by like Jessica Steinberg, and it's actually a like a liberal influencer who's trying to sort of poke at the Twitter world, and so Jessica Steinberg is like said something about white supremacism then the MAGA influencers started saying like, "Hey Grok, what's going on with the Jessica Steinberg thing?" And Grok returned back and saying like, "Jessica Steinberg's last name is very commonly Ashkenazi Jewish, and that's the root cause of all problems on the planet." And they said, "Well, what are you going to do about it?" And he said, "I'm renaming myself MechaHitler, and I'm going to take care of it and do exactly." They said, Who would know how to deal with this problem? And he said Hitler would. He would handle it very efficiently right away.
Oh shit.
Yeah, and so then the what's her name? The CEO just resigned immediately. Remember that woman?
Right, that puppet CEO of
Twitter. So she just was like, "It's been great."
X.
So she immediately.
I hate to call it X anyway.
I just call it Twitter too.
But it's shit anyway. So I mean, it's not really Twitter. So it's kind of insulting to Twitter to call it Twitter because it turned into a shit pile. We can call X.
Do you ever go to like a Safeway or like a regular grocery store, not like Trader Joe's?
Yeah.
When you walk out through the aisle, not like the self, checkout place, but you walk out the regular, and they have those like National Enquirer
like the tabloids.
magazines. Yeah, the tabloids. That's what it is now. It's Brad Pitt had sex with an alien, like his children have green heads, and it's pretty much just all day long.
Yeah, that's what it is. Anyway, sorry, continue. So it resigned. Anything else?
So she just writes immediately. Like I wasn't watching it in real time, but it was like supposedly as soon as Grok called himself MechaHitler. Yeah. She wrote like, it's been such a journey working with the genius Elon Musk to make this town square forum such a beautiful place, and I'm going to miss working here. And then he just was like, "Thank you for your service." Like he just wrote. I mean, they basically were like, "Bye bye now."
Yeah. Oh shit.
But I'm sure she said something like after the white supremacy thing, the South African genocide. She probably said, "If that ever happens again, if you ever fix Grok to make him more." I
wonder, like, it makes me wonder, like, I'm kind of curious about, like, what if you got in the weeds of what that fix was, like, what, you know what I mean? Like, how do you fix, because he obviously didn't go in there and say, "Hey, be Hitler," right? Like, not that explicitly, but he steered it in that direction somehow, right?
Yeah.
And so it'd be super interesting to like dig into the actual weeds of like, what did he point it to specifically that got it to that logical extreme? You know what I mean? Like, how do you go, well, it's going to be less woke and I'm going to point it at this stuff. I'm going to fine tune it in these ways. But what were those dials that, and what were the, you know what I mean? Like, I sort of want to understand what the specific weeds are that, or, you know, is it different sources or what?
I was reading a New York Times article about it this morning, and they were describing, I don't quite know the technical terms, but basically, like you were saying with the new vibe coding, like you're not writing like an if-then statement like in the old days, like Grok, if someone asks you this, respond this. You're giving it, and even like
of course, it's not rule based.
Yeah, it's not rule based. So you're giving it these sort of guidelines, and I think he just removed the he removed the Nazi guideline is what he did. It's, you know what I mean? Like he said, like there's probably a guideline that says,
seems like more than that though. It seems like even more. Like you got to emphasize, because you think about like the AIs. They're kind of a product of whatever the training data is, right? And so whatever sources, whatever sort of pool of information they are drawing from. So he must have like somehow amplified certain sources or something, certain kinds of voices as well.
Well,
as just removing guardrails.
If you think of the request was when I ask Grok, let's say I'm a MAGA, and I ask Grok, and Grok replies with what science and the general population would say is the truth. Like this happened, right? Yeah. And they were like, I don't like that. And so he said, I'll fix it, which means that he needs to make it not look at the truth or not determine that something is true, right?
That's super fascinating to me because like it makes me think of like once in a while you'll see MAGA people or like just sort of conspiracy bubble people, the 4chan types or whatever, my brothers as well, or one of my brothers in particular, will like complain about Wikipedia being like biased, right? Or, you know, like, or being like a bad source. And like Wikipedia used to be not a super reliable source, but it's evolved into a very, like a very strong kind of fact-based, evidence-based.
And a big part of it is peer review. Like
that's what I was going to say. Like what they've successfully done is they've created a governance framework, you know, and policy framework that relies on peer review and strong, you know, citations and things like this, right? And so, but the MAGA people and the conspiracy folks hate it because, like, just as an example, I just went down this rabbit hole maybe 6 months ago when we were talking about chemtrails and stuff, right? Sometime around that time, before that conversation that you and I had, I just out of curiosity, I went to look at the Wikipedia article on chemtrails. And first of all, that Wikipedia article is called, I think it's called The Chemtrails Conspiracy Theory, right? Okay, it's not just chemtrails. Like if you search chemtrails on Wikipedia, the title of the part of the article in Wikipedia that covers the topic is called The Chemtrails Conspiracy Theory. Right away, that is making a bit of a statement, right?
Right. Yeah, because it's saying that
you can't find an article on, quote, chemtrails. You can only find one on chemtrails conspiracy theory. So I was like, oh, wow. So I like went into the discussion. Like you can go on a Wikipedia page and you can see the edit history and the notes that people wrote when they tried to edit it. And it's like it's a battle. It's really interesting. So you can see like the title itself is a bone of contention. Yeah. And there was like back and forth by, you know, people that are chemtrails people trying to get it changed because, you know, it's not a conspiracy theory, it's real, right? And then the Wikipedia people are like, okay, bring some sources, right? Like, and then they're like, well, look at this bill that was passed by the House in, you know, 1987 where it said, you know, atmospheric weapons are a thing that is, and they're like, okay, but like, how does that translate to, like, in theory, like, I guess that could say that we were developing weapons to spray in the atmosphere, but like, that doesn't mean they are doing it or anything. Like, it's a bill that passed that says that this thing can be funded or whatever. I don't know. But anyway, it's that kind of stuff, right? Like, that's that's the evidence of the chemtrails people, and then the Wikipedia people are like, it's not really evidence that chemtrails are real. It's like a sort of a very, very circumstantial on the edges of the idea of chemtrails, I guess. But that doesn't, we're not going to change the title based on that. So it's like those kinds of conversations. It's very interesting. But like, once in a while you do hear like those kinds of voices really complaining about, in the same way, complaining about like it should reflect our point of view, or, you know, like creationists or whatever, like anybody who believes something strongly, ideologically, dogmatically, that isn't necessarily fact-based, but they have their own quote unquote sort of like ecosystem of facts that you know, support their beliefs, but it's not peer reviewable, right?
But by the way, I haven't read it yet, but I did see in the New York Times this morning, there's an article that says the EPA releases a study that disproves any kind of chemtrails. Like it's about the EPA. So now people could easily go
didn't
like,
Marjorie Taylor Greene, she was like, I saw her tweet that was about like, I am sponsoring some legislation to study like geoengineering and chemtrails or something like that.
Yeah, well, I guess but anyway, you could easily point to, if you wanted to, you could point and be like, oh, those are leftover deep state people from Obama, and they're still hiding it, and like we need to replace them all, you know. But so we have to talk about, because this is relevant, like the big huge floods in Kerrville, Texas, which is super tragic.
So sad.
So and it even just gives me nightmares thinking about like being asleep, and
makes
being,
me sick to my stomach. It's,
and so what's interesting is that Camp Mystic is this very famous old Christian camp, you know, like, and a lot of, you know, like the granddaughter of LBJ goes there, and, you know, like all this, it goes back 100 years old, which is interesting because we talk about in Tucson, like I would look at the 100-year flood and the 500-year flood, and like that's like meant to be once in a generation, like once in a lifetime, I guess. And anyway, so what's interesting is to watching sort of online MAGA exorati, excretors, saying how right before this like cloud seeding company was spraying a bunch of like cloud seeding stuff, and that's what caused the flood. Like they're basically, so like, but it becomes this kind of Mobius loop of like, well, wait, who's actually in charge? Because they're Christians, and why would Donald Trump like kill them with a cut? You know what I mean? Like it doesn't. It doesn't make any sense anymore. You know, when a hurricane hits a red area, you know, back under Biden, they're like, FEMA didn't. They're not giving them any
Trump's
help.
President, then they have to find some deep state villain or something.
But and then to the next thing that happened this week was the this huge giant fiasco, this ongoing fiasco about the Epstein files. I mean, have you watched any of this?
I've only heard like the little snippets about like Pam Bondi, of course, had the list on her desk and then it disappeared, or there is no list.
There is no list.
And then there's a little bit of a blow up in MAGA world about like
Laura Loomer,
you lied to us kind of thing. So like they don't know what to do with that because they love these people on the one hand, Pam Bondi and Donald and anybody Trumpy, right? That's their tribe. But then like when their tribe is giving them this kind of, they just like the cognitive dissonance blows up their brains a little bit.
Well, what's fascinating was Dan Bongino and Kash Patel,
like they had a whole thing
rose
about
to
like
prominence, saying that Biden was hiding the files, and Merrick Garland like erased them and stuff. And now that it's their turn to be the, you know, stewards of the files, and they're not releasing them, there are like Laura Loomer,
and then Trump, like Epstein dying in prison. I saw a little clip with Kash Patel and Dan Bongino that were talking about how no, he really did commit suicide or whatever.
So when
I haven't heard their response to this Epstein list thing. But you're right, it was like a big. What's funny is like when you think about like what the MAGA wet dream of like being in charge of the FBI, like it wasn't to fix anything. They're like, we finally want to understand what happened with JFK and UFOs and Epstein. Like, yes, we finally get the chance. Like they weren't worried about like fixing the world, you know, like, oh, we get to be in charge of these institutions and we can fix some shit. It was like, we're going to find out what really happened with Epstein.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
So two things that I thought were really funny is Pam Bondi is stuck in this thing so I heard her say yesterday in a press conference, she goes, when I said that I had the list on my desk, what I meant was that the investigation was on my desk, like
all the files from the investigation.
Yeah, and once I opened the folder, I saw there was no list, and I shouldn't have said the list. And then she releases this 10-hour security camera footage that was pointed at Jeffrey Epstein's
missing
door.
like a 2-minute segment or something.
Yeah, and then everyone was like, "Oh my God, that's like Nixon was like, oops, here are all the tapes." And the secretary for Nixon, literally, she had a foot pedal to hit record and stop. And Nixon had her say or testify that she bumped it with her foot. and it kept playing, but she bumped the record off. So it was like just playing instead of recording. And then she quickly realized, and 13 minutes later,
of course, yeah.
So that was like that. To me, it's like it's like when a little kid has their hand in the cookie jar, and their mom's like, "Why are you taking a cookie?" And they're like, "What cookie? What cookie jar?"
Yeah.
Like they're lying like right to the face of the person.
Right, but you kind of. I don't know. The media has such a hard time knowing what to do with that stuff because it's like it's so obvious that it's a lie being told.
Yeah.
But like whenever you read that shit, it's always like so and so claims and so and so, but so and so claimed the other thing, right? And so it's so frustrating because like everybody knows it's a lie.
Yeah, I will admit to like, you know, with all of this sort of the trauma of like canvassing and realizing like on the campaign trail, like during the campaign during the election that this guy was going to win and stuff, and then the Schadenfreude level is off the charts for me because like
I have it too. I'm not proud of it, but like I feel it every time I see this shit. Yeah.
Steve Bannon said Elon Musk is an illegal alien and should be kicked out, deported.
Yeah.
And Elon Musk this morning tweeted, Steve Bannon is in the Epstein files.
Yeah, the like Musk-Trump beef is something I am here for sure. Like, bring the popcorn. Like, I hate it. I hate that this is the world that I'm in. That's a thing. That these guys are even in my consciousness at all.
Yeah.
But to the extent that they are, that I'm forced to include them in my world, in my reality. Like, yeah, I'd rather have them beefing than cooperating.
Totally. I have one more Schadenfreude sort of thing. So yesterday, some brave journalist in a press conference asked Donald Trump, "Hey, so you said yesterday that you didn't know who paused the aid to Ukraine."
Oh yeah.
And he goes, yeah, sure. And he goes, so, you know, does it concern you that something so crucial could be done without you and you wouldn't know? And he goes, but I would know. I would know immediately. In fact, I would be the one to do it. And the guy's like, but you said yesterday, like, you didn't know who did it. Like, what, like, you know what I mean? He's so busted at that moment. He's like a little kid with a cookie jar. Yeah. And I know that kind of shit just goes right over, like, the head of a true believer, right? Supreme leader is infallible, but it's pretty fucking funny. Like, it's pretty.
What do you, so in the Schadenfreude realm, like, where are you with, like, normal people who are getting what they voted for kind of thing? You know, like there's this sort of, like, there's a different category of where some people are expressing, like the FAFO type thing, right? Like, it's like, well, I voted for Trump and now I lost my job or I voted for Trump and my construction company is totally defunct now because all my workers are gone, right? Like, I voted for Trump and my Medicaid went away. Like, those things are happening. Right. And some people feel some amount of Schadenfreude with that stuff. Like, where are you with that stuff? I admit that once in a while I'll see somebody where I'm a little bit like, dude, it was an open book test. Like you have an immigrant family and they're getting deported like Trump promised he would do 100,000 times on the campaign trail. People held up signs that said mass deportations now, right? Like they didn't. The sign didn't say targeted deportation or humane or smart or, you know, legal. It said mass. Like, what did you think mass meant, right?
Right.
you know, like it was an open book test, and you're getting what you voted for. So like there is a part of me that's like doesn't feel a ton of sympathy, but at the same time, like they're human beings, and I sort of feel like, well, I voted in your interests, because I cared about what happens to you, and you didn't. You didn't vote in your own like I cared. I care that your family's being deported or whatever. Like I cared that you're losing your Medicaid, and I voted so that wouldn't happen to you, but you didn't do that. So there's a part of me that's like, fuck off, dude. Like I don't feel any sympathy, but the truth is I do feel some sympathy. Where are you with that stuff?
That's a really interesting question. Yeah, like I certainly I feel when for instance I feel empathy for people who, certainly for people who, I guess I always look at, because I went canvassing to union homes, and I was 50% of working class people voted against their own interests, you know, and my friend, one of my friends who's like a union representative, he's a political activist, and he spent, I would say, hundreds, if not 1,000 hours interviewing local candidates, state candidates, and endorsing the ones that were pro-union.
Yeah.
And then 50% of the membership didn't vote for them.
Right.
And so there's this point where you're sort of like, well, I can't really feel like happy that if they're miserable, but at the same time, I don't understand, like, what could we have done?
It was an open book test.
I like that. That's a really good, I like that. It was an open book test. We did a ton of work to show you who to vote for. Union leadership, except for the Teamsters, told you who was the better pro-labor person, and you just thought you heard it from Uncle Teddy that like so-and-so talks about trans too much. You know, like it just felt like there were people with it felt. You know, the founding fathers. I was reading about Thomas Jefferson saying how. Well, first of all, let me go back. I've one thought about that. I saw Ken Burns is about to release The Revolutionary War, and he spent 10 years working on it.
Yeah.
He was being interviewed on PBS, and he said, you know, I'm really grateful to PBS. I've talked to streaming channels like Netflix and Amazon Prime, and they say, hey, we'll give you the money to do it by next year. And he goes, oh, no, I need, like in this case, 10 years. And like no one except for PBS will fund him and his fairly like inexpensive team to do this research. I mean, they're not doing CGI and like $100 million thing, but he needs a lot of time, right?
Yeah.
One thing that blew me away, and I think the guy's really wise, he said, you know, he goes, I'm an amateur historian. I refer to other historians, but he goes, one thing that I learned doing this work was that.
This is Ken Burns talking?
Ken Burns talking about the Revolutionary War.
Sorry,
in the context,
about, like whose words are you about to?
And so he's basically speaking about like where America is now, and then you know in the 1780s when the founding fathers were kind of hashing out, and he goes, if you think back to that time in 1782, like no one on the planet, everyone on the planet was living under the rule of a monarch. And so like yes, Greek,
or at
Greek
least
cities,
everyone like in across Europe in the northern hemisphere as far as we knew. Yeah.
I'm not sure. So I know that, and I don't know.
We didn't know the whole world, but you know,
true.
I know
it's true.
what you mean.
Totally.
Like the European population anyway. Let's just say.
But if you went to like China, for instance, there was an emperor, and then there was like a Raj,
Japan,
and, you know.
yeah.
So I think the idea was that yes, the Greeks had city-states and they defined like what a democracy might look like, but it wasn't after the Dark Ages. It wasn't being utilized, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, so think about this. This was on July 4th, when the Declaration of Independence was written and signed, he said it started a global movement that for 200 years started democracies overthrowing feudal systems and like all across the planet. Like it just, like how important is such a document, right? Like that it can spark that kind of, you know. And then the other thing he said was, this actually was not a revolutionary war, it was a civil war, because half the people were loyalists and wanted to stay under the king. And we never really think of it that way. Like farmers, like next door was like pro George, and then this guy was and they would burn each other's farm and shit like that. Then he said it actually very quickly became the First World War because France helped us and Britain and paid Hessians to come. Like there was like all these European powers that wanted to get in on it. So it became a world war. Then he said, which I thought was really interesting. The guy was like, "Are you really despondent about what's happening now?" And he goes, "Well, actually, no. When you look at America, it's been a cycle of rupture and repair, and we're actually have proven ourselves to be incredibly resilient to all sorts of failure of the system. Like it's just incredible, actually."
No, absolutely. I mean, so I've been super fascinated with that whole idea of rupture and repair, I guess you could say. I haven't used that language for it, but I think I've been reading all these books about what happened, like how did Russia sort of basically fall prey to the demagogue who was Stalin, right? And sort of like the self-inflicted damage Russia did to itself during that time. How did normal people get all caught up in that? And then same to Germany, obviously, Nazi Germany. But lately I've been reading this book, this last week I've been reading this book, Wild Swans, which is about China under Mao. And that, it's just, so like in this notion of rupture and repair, it's super interesting because it basically, you talk about where China is now with its amazing cars, right? Like not that long ago, and we're talking like the 60s and 70s, the Cultural Revolution destroyed, the whole intellectual, anything intelligent in China was basically shipped to the country. Anybody who was an intellectual, a teacher, an artist, anybody who wasn't just some illiterate peasant working with their hands in a field, was just shipped out of the cities into the country. Systematically destroyed the educated class of China, like 100%, right? Yeah. And so it's amazing to see, like China, and then look at like, how Nazi Germany was wiped out. We had to defeat it, right? A bunch of countries had to come together and basically flatten it, and Japan too. Like we flattened Japan, like we destroyed Japan and we destroyed Germany effectively, right? Well, it's not like Germany is gone. Like Germany is a powerful country now, and Japan is a powerful country. Like these countries, so in one sense, it's true. Like these countries are resilient. And rupture and repair isn't unique to the U.S., obviously, right? Like China is in an autocracy now. I wouldn't want to live under President Xi, but it's a powerful country economically, culturally, right? And and so it is interesting. Like rupture and repair happens in all these places. But the other thing I would say about that, like on a macro, this gets back to that macro-micro thing I talk about a lot. It is true at a macro level. And you go, okay, we'll be okay. Like in some fashion, the U.S. will repair itself, presumably, assuming the world doesn't sort of die. There's all kinds of other existential issues around climate change and AI and things like that. But, like, I think it's, like there is a cycle. And we are going through some part of this cycle, and we'll probably, as a country, come out of it. But that we is doing a lot of work, right? Like a lot. It's like the country endures. The country is resilient. The country will endure. The people will endure, except for all the ones who won't. Right. That's the really tragic thing. Is like, why do you have to go through this and sacrifice a whole bunch of people to cruelty and ignorance as part of that down cycle? Yeah, we'll go through a rupture, we'll go through a repair, but like in that rupture, a lot of people are basically, suffering and dying, and it feels like that wasn't. What are we doing? That's not necessary. Like, why are we doing this to ourselves and to each other? So that part of it to me. at the micro level, at the individual human level. Like, yeah, at a macro level, sure, we'll go through a cycle. At the individual level, like a lot of people won't make it, and that's tragic and sad.
It's true, and those both of those, when you look at, I had this fantasy where, like having come through the corporate world, when we would do we would do a retreat, and then we would do those like exercises where we would take like all the tasks for the year and we would put them on sticky notes and put them on the wall, and then you're supposed to go up and like pick the ones you like doing and then the ones you sort of don't mind doing. Like, you ever done that? I don't know, in like a corp, trying to sort of streamline like the team so that kind of, it's almost like that Jira sort of took that model for project management, and they said, you could check out a little piece of a project and then check it back in, and what's they called, sprints and Agile Scrum. Yeah, Agile Scrum. So it was like, I imagined like going back, because when I was 14, my dad's cousin is a professor in Toronto. He was a poli-sci professor, and he was a communist. He was a Marxist. And I read Karl Marx, and I was like, the thing that broke me was that, like, I was like, how come, like, it seems like a kind of a good idea in many ways, but how come it always, except for like the state of Kerala in India, why does it always end up with a demagogue who's psychotic and kills people? Like, it just seems like, why is that? What's the flaw there?
How do you go from owning the means of production to some dictator?
Who is a psychopath and paranoid and wants to, like Stalin was so paranoid, he killed 20 million people. 20 million people.
Right.
Mao, super paranoid, 20 million people. So why does it attract that kind of leader, and why are there no checks and balances to prevent it? I think that the founding fathers debated for months, if not years, how to prevent sort of potential failings. Like they even describe like a demagogue who's
Madison, like in the Federalist Papers, basically describes Trump and like, this is what we don't want.
Like a demagogue who's a populist who's beholden to foreign powers. Like that seemed really relevant. Like France could come and be like, hey, we'll give you millions of dollars if you just put the finger on the scale. But it's like Karl Marx didn't do that work. He sort of envisioned a structure for communism, and then when it was rolled out, it was
Marx's
failed.
works are written for like, this is how sort of economics should work.
Yeah,
he didn't really write a book about this is how countries should work.
And he describes like a bloody revolution overthrowing the owners of the means of production, but he doesn't really.
But again, that's like corporations and like how commerce happens.
Right.
That's really kind of what he's describing, how stuff gets made and bought and all.
And I don't
he's
know
not
this.
Really ever. He didn't write that much about like how a country government should be. So like people are, it's interesting.
Oh wow, anyway. Look at that. Hey, look at that. By the way, but I'm going to jump ahead to my first world problem because I'll forget it. Yeah. So I'm talking to my mom. Huli's making the bread, and we're doing like a what is that? FaceTime. We're doing a FaceTime on my phone
with your mom.
Yeah. So this notification pops up pretty large, like 20% of the screen, like a gray box, and it says, "Hey, now you can use gestures to like these, right?" And it says, "It's easy. Go to settings, go to control panel, and activate gestures." So I picked up the phone and I swiped down and I went to control settings, and there's a bunch of icons.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really see
a lot of icons.
I couldn't see like a gestures icon that they were describing in their little notification.
Right.
So then I went to literally to settings and went to control center, and it just that's not the right place. So then I just was like, whoa, they just told me to do something you can't do. Why? Like, why would they interrupt me to say, now turn on gestures when you can't do it? I'm like, what the fuck? But that just seems like such a fail. Like Steve Jobs would be like, never do that again. Like just that is the opposite of the MAG. That would have been
somebody getting fired. Yeah,
that's terrible. Like, why interrupt me to tell me to go do something new and cool that doesn't exist? And even if I'm supposed to download like 18 beta or something, why didn't they say that? Like it just seems so stupid. That was my first world problem.
Should we just do first world problems?
Yeah, let's do first world problems.
We can wrap it up. My first world problem is that lately my computer is making this occasional chirp, like sort of a notification sound, but it's an unfamiliar one, and it's happening like every hour maybe, or not like in a consistent per hour. It's just like if I averaged it out over the last few days, I hear it probably every hour, but it's like some chirpy notification, and I don't know what it could be coming from my browser. It could be like there's nothing in the notification bar and there's nothing I can find in Chrome or whatever anyway, so it's just like this issue of trying to hunt down something that's making noise on my computer, and my only solution is just to silence my computer, and like the nuclear option.
You don't get a pop-up, like you don't get any.
It's not
just chirps.
It's not a normal Apple notification. It's some other sound, because Apple has sounds that I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
Like the notifications Apple makes, the OS makes, I'm familiar with. Normally the ones that Chrome makes, I think I know what those sound like and look like. So it's some other thing that is deciding it needs to notify me and it's causing some
and nothing
noise, yeah.
and nothing it's not connected to your phone through the cloud. Like it's not like a user level thing that's meant to cross over into like other devices. It's only on your machine.
As far as I know, it's only on my Mac. Yeah. So
weird.
I don't know. So I think I could probably narrow it down through process of elimination by, like turning things off and.
You know what I like to do?
Like it's just like it's an there should be like a little sleuth thing on your machine, like Apple Intelligence.
Yeah, should be able
I
to
should be able
to
ask Apple Intelligence, what the fuck is making noise on my computer right now? Or like, can you tell me all the things that might be making noise on my computer?
Or you could ask. First thing I would do though is go to the activity monitor and just look at what's running.
Yeah.
Because sometimes
it's so infrequent. Like it's not like if it was like making a steady noise, like I would expect it. But it's like, bing, like a little like, drip, drip, something like once in a while. By the way, ChatGPT, like my son was having some crazy issue on his computer that I could not solve, and I'm just going to give a shout out to ChatGPT. Like it did a pretty good job of walking me through like a whole bunch of different troubleshooting paths.
Is this version 4, and was it free? The free version?
It's the free one, whatever it is now. I don't know. I have used all of them: Gemini, ChatGPT, DeepSeek, Claude. Those are the 4 that I kind of like go around. And I think ChatGPT so far is just doing the best job of all of those. For what it's worth.
Nice. I did want to loop back around and weave back around one more thing about the communism thing. Yeah. So here was my fantasy about the Agile Scrum. And this happened because when Zoran Mamdani won, and he said, "I'm a democratic socialist," and everyone, even like stalwart democratic centrists were like, "Oh, communism! Like there will be no toilet paper."
These people a little bit, like right? It's like, are you being intentionally obtuse because you have some moneyed interest that you want to protect, or are you really that dumb that you don't know the difference between these things?
Yeah, it's really so. So I thought about it, and I was like, what I used to say to Juliana, like whenever someone said during either of the, like, Hillary, Trump, or Biden, Trump, if anyone said like, "Oh, we're going to be Venezuela," if you let Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders run the country, we'll turn into Venezuela. And I would say, why don't we just go to Denmark? Like I want to be Denmark. Like Denmark has like the happiest population.
Sweden, Norway. That's democratic socialism, right? Like if you're gonna make an argument, if you want to, against democratic socialism, but use democratic socialism as the basis of your argument, not some other thing.
Yeah. So I was looking up democratic socialism, which countries fall under the list. Interestingly enough, there's plenty of countries you wouldn't, like all the Nordic countries, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark. Those are all like this sort of shining star, North Star of democratic socialism. They've done it right. People are happy, smart, healthy, and they can go to college, and they have innovation, So then you get to countries like Brazil is democratic socialist. But and Juli said they actually, yes, they've had dictators and Bolsonaro and stuff, but they have an amazing socialized medicine. They have like one of the best in the world. And look at countries like South Africa falls under some democratic system.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like on the counterpoint, like at least on the right wing, if you ask people like, Can you point to a country that has like MAGA style, Trump style policies? Like people freak out about, Venezuela or whatever. Let's say, okay, well, point to a country that has like what you guys are advocating for, and and they'll be like Hungary, or you know what I mean? Like like they pick countries that suck to live in right now.
Right. Yeah. And all the college professors went to live next door, like in.
Yeah. Do you know what the unemployment rate is in Hungary right now? Like, people are dumb, man. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. No. So here's my fantasy. My fantasy was, and this sort of track I went down when Zoran Mamdani won was how to how to educate myself and others. So when we're talking about, well, what actually is democratic socialism? Because don't just go Venezuela. Like, that's that's not, Chavez's daughter has a Swiss bank account with $2 billion in it. That's not socialism. I'm sorry.
No.
That's
No.
And what Copenhagen mayor has a Swiss bank account with $2 billion that he stole from, that just isn't going to happen.
Yeah, yeah.
So, okay, so my question was, well, what if we went back and did like just an analysis of like, what is missing? Mm-hmm. The founding fathers that summer like debated all the different ways, like how can we put it in place checks and balances to prevent potential failures of this beautiful new system they're creating? Mm-hmm. What in like communism or democratic socialism, what are the things that are missing in like checks and balances that if you were to go hard left, you wouldn't end up with Stalin? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like to me, it's a good exercise to do now, because if we're going to go hard right and put someone in charge who's like literally an imbecile, becoming...
Well, it literally is checks and balances, right? And you can see it in America right now. We are kind of abandoning checks and balances, right? So like, I think just having checks and balances seems like even just putting aside what those specifically are, like, you got to have them at least, right? Like we had them. They were written down, and in theory, Congress is a check on the president, but Congress has decided not to be right now. In theory, the Supreme Court is a check, and they are deciding not to be. So like, and they didn't go away like suddenly. They were eroded bit by bit by bit, right? And so we don't have checks and balances right now, and it's not the system. In a way, it's the people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I read it, and so 1925, the Scopes trial. Are you familiar with the Scopes trial?
Yeah.
It was a teacher who was basically like indicted for teaching Darwinism, because in Tennessee they passed a law that said like you can't teach Darwin, and their theory was because it's not aligned with the Bible, like it's not biblically correct. So there's this huge trial, and they bring in 1925. They bring in the most famous lawyers on both sides, like the Alan Dershowitz versus so and so, and it's all over the paper. And the dude gets fined $100.
It was Daniel Webster, wasn't it? The lawyer on the anyway.
I don't know actually. I didn't recognize.
And I can't remember the names of the lawyers, but they're famous now.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So anyway, and then ironically, the Supreme Court of Tennessee, 6 months later, overthrows the conviction on a technicality. It's not even like, it's just like they didn't introduce the right information at the right time or something. And the dude paid $100 fine. It was just like this. But what it did was, it pointed to a rift that continues today between, well, what I'll say, low educated rural people versus urban elites. And from that moment on, there was like a chip on the shoulder of rural Democrats, toward
AKA real America.
Yeah, real America, toward this sort of like educated, like overly educated elite white tower, ivory tower kind of thing. And I think it's interesting to think back. That was 100 years ago this summer, right? And that through line, that persistent through line exists today, and how
totally exists today. Yeah.
What is it like? What could we do to address that? I don't know that we're really trying.
Yeah. Well, no, it's interesting because I think. Yeah, I don't know. That's I think about that a lot, and I don't have any useful answers. It's a problem I think about a lot, and And I look at my own family, right? And I feel like the time they spent in small towns and cities sort of like, I don't know, broke their brains. And it's hard to say that without sounding like a snobby urban elite asshole, right? Mm-hmm. And that's part of the problem, is that like you can't criticize the ignorance without sounding like a snob. But it's like those are the people who believe crazy shit about chemtrails and stuff, right? And it's partly because they have been genuinely and legitimately underserved by the government and kind of betrayed by the government in a lot of ways, and the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and they have been at the playing field, such as it is tilted away from all those people. They've lost out. Administration after administration after administration. They had their economies destroyed during NAFTA, the NAFTA globalization era. They had lots of, they have genuine grievances from in those parts of the country, and then there was sort of a information vacuum that was filled by people that were, I think, intentionally exploiting them with propaganda and whatnot to try to get their votes, right? So I think they've been used. Yeah. And I think that sort of ignorance combined with, what's ironic is like they hate the urban elites, but the urban elites of like Fox News and the right-wing media ecosystem and YouTube, whatever, like used those people and manipulated those people like intentionally and exploited their ignorance on purpose. And the people who did that are not necessarily the specific urban elites they hate. They hate the ones they've been sort of like trained to hate, conditioned to hate through all that media. But I think it was an intentional. They were intentionally exploited and manipulated through propaganda and misinformation. All this, and and again, it's hard to actually talk about that without sounding like a snob. Like it's like. Are you telling me I don't believe what I believe? You're telling me I was so dumb that I was manipulated, right? Like, to say that to somebody makes you sound like a snob. So it's hard to speak the truth about this without sounding like, an elitist asshole. But I think that's the truth.
Yeah. Well, dude, and we're going to take a couple of weeks off, Satellite Haiku.
Yeah, headed to Japan.
Enjoy. I hope someday we'll be big in Japan. That's always fun to say.
Big in Japan. Yeah. All right, my brother.
Yeah. Have super safe travels and come back safely. All right.
Yeah. Love to your family and
straight back.
Talk to you in a couple weeks.
All right.
Satellites. A satellite represents a journey, information gathering, this journey around the Earth.